So you've cut your pattern out and now you have all 4 pieces. If you're gonna share your fabric, which some people don't want to share their fabric, that's fine. You have to make sure that the 2 squares that are opposite are the ones that you've cut out. So, for instance, I have owl fabric and then I have pink fabric, and I'm gonna make it patchwork, which means I'm using 2 different types of fabric. I need to make sure that 1 and 4 is one fabric and then 3 and 2 is another fabric. So at this point I'm going to cut out 1 and 4 out of my owl fabric. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to pull it on. Make sure that you have it on the right side. Mine's a pattern, so you can do it one of 2 ways. You can just lay it on however you want, or you can find the part that you like the most and you can put it. So my daughter likes pink because I told her she likes pink. So I'm going to put my 4 over the pink owl, and just to give it some contrast, I'm going to find a purple owl that I like, and I'm going to put piece number 1 over a purple owl, which I think I'm going to have to do the pink one up here. It's a little bit of puzzling to get it the way you want it. Okay, so like always, you need to pin every 2 fingers. So I like to pin, sometimes I just pin the corners real quick, so it's a little bit easier to keep it down. Now, key to this is you don't want your pins to stick out when you're pinning your fabric, okay, because it's going to get in the way of the scissors. Remember, go down and then come back up through the fabric. And then go another 2 fingers. And then come back up. Okay, again, every 2 fingers all the way around. You're going to have to use both sets of pins that you have in your sewing kit. Notice how I only had 1 blue pin left. These pins work just as fine, so it doesn't matter which ones you use. Beginner sewers, it's easier with these types of pins with the ball point on the end to actually pin. These might hurt your fingers after a while, but they work perfectly fine. So they're both pinned the way I want them. I pin the corners so that when I'm cutting the corners, they don't come up and I don't make uneven cuts. Grab your shears. Remember, your shears are your big one. You only use for fabric. So you're going to make long cuts. Notice how I move the pins all in so they're not sticking out of the fabric. Oops, I have one right here. Okay. This is only done when you're cutting. When you're sewing, your pins have to stick out a little bit so they're easier to grab. When you cut, obviously you don't want to have to cut around the ball point of the pin. You want to make long, smooth cuts all the way around your paper. The longer your cuts are, the less jagged fleece you get. Remember, you want to cut on the edge. Do you see how I have a little bit extra on the side? Perfectly normal, perfectly fine. Don't try and sit there and keep cutting at your fabric, because then you're going to have to recut a square. Okay, I got to the corner. I'm going to move my fabric around so it's easier to cut. Again, long, straight cuts. Just like on the earlier videos I've shown you, you don't want to keep going the whole way down. You're going to get a jagged edge. Now, if you notice, my bottom here is pretty close to the edge, but I still have enough room where I can still make the cuts. And I notice some of my pins are not right, so I'm going to have to move them so that I can make smooth cuts along this edge. It doesn't matter if you pin this way. I know I switched the way I'm pinning. It doesn't really matter as long as the pins are in there every 2 fingers. I've been sewing close to 20 years now, and I still pin both ways. And I always still pin every 2 fingers. So you'll never see a video where there's not this many pins in my fabric. It just keeps your pattern straight and helps you keep cutting straight. Move that so I can see what I'm doing. Okay. And then cut your far edge. Again, you might have to adjust some of your pins so that they're even. I just had to move one of mine. Okay, so your first square gets cut out. Now, the most important thing about this is how are you going to get your A, B, and C and number 1 onto your fabric? Well, it's pretty easy. Flip it around because this is your wrong side. Okay, I put my pattern on my right side of my fabric. I'm going to flip it around, use my marking pencil. Okay, use the blue one. The white one only shows up on really dark fabric, so if you have black, obviously you want to use the white pencil versus the blue one. So this corner is B, so I'm going to flip it around. This is not meant to show up very well. Okay, it's just meant as a temporary thing. You might have to do it a couple of times. I'm going to show you how light it is. Okay, but label it B so that when you're pinning your fabric on the wrong sides, that you know. See, it's super hard to see. You can kind of see it on the eye a little bit. I'm also going to label this side 1. You might have to go back and forth a couple times. Like so. If you notice, can you see how that's 1 right here that I wrote? It took me a little bit of effort. Flip back to the front. This says C, so I need to label this corner as C. Again, you might have to do it a couple times. When you wash your fabric, this goes away. This is on the inside of my pillow, so it doesn't really matter. And then the last one I have to label is this top corner, and that's A. So you might have to go back and forth. If you're having trouble with your marking pencil, I do have some chalk that you may use. But again, the chalk gets kind of dusty. So you're going to repeat this for the next 3 steps. Okay, so I labeled the back, so you can see piece number 4. You can't really see in the corner there, but they're labeled so that so I know what ones I'm matching up. At this point, you're going to take your pattern. Now, if you want to use your pin cushion, your tomato, to keep your pins in versus this clear little plastic tub, you're more than welcome to. If you want to keep it in the plastic tub, you can keep it in the plastic tub. That's up to you. Some people prefer the pin cushion versus the plastic bin that they come in. And if you lose the lid to your pins, then you're going to actually have to use your pin cushion. If you're doing 2 different colors, then you're going to have to cut out pieces 2 and 3. And they're going to go here and here. If you're using all the same color, you're going to have, obviously I would have cut 2 more of these and they would have been gone here and here. Okay, so either way you're going to end up with 4 squares. And this is what it's going to look like. This is what it looks like when it's all done cutting and you've labeled the back. This is the front side of my pillow. If I flip over, you'll see where I've marked A and B. But you're doing a patchwork pillow. This is what it looks like. If you have all of the same fabric, obviously all 4 of your squares will match.